What's going on? We are back with another new potential deck for Shimmering Skies. This time, we're going to be taking a look at everyone's long forgotten favorite, Blurple. Each are getting some new powerful tools that we can hopefully use together in order to keep our bounce train rolling, but also have a more powerful endgame. If you want to take a look at the deck list, it looks like all of the cards are now up on Dreamborn, so I'll include that down below in the description. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the deck. So starting off first with our one cost, it's going to be our always reliable Chernobog's Followers. This is a 2/1 for 1 with the ability, whenever this character quests, you have the option to banish it and draw a card. Very useful to get cards when you need them, but also it is a 2 attacking body, so it can be very useful in certain early game scenarios to have that board presence advantage. And that actually does it for our one cost characters. So if we don't get that on turn 1, we kind of lose out on the value. But anyway, as long as we're inking and we're replenishing our hand, we should be in a pretty good spot. So starting off with our 2 cost characters, we've got Madam Mim Snake. This is the classic 2 cost 3/3. You have to replace a character from your board in order to play her. Very useful for bouncing enter the battlefield effects or exit the battlefield effects, as well as you can use this as an alternate way to heal characters and to keep them safe for an extra turn. If you've played any purple deck, you know this is a standard card. Now the first new card coming to Shimmering Skies that we've included in the deck is going to be Chicha. Chicha is a uninkable 2 cost, 2 attacking, 1 willpower, has support, but we really are after the ability here, 1 on the way. With this card, whenever it's on the field and you put the second ink in your inkwell, you actually get to draw a card, meaning that we have a constant way to replenish our hand even though we're going to be inking more than we should. I think this card's going to be huge for a lot of Sapphire decks, giving us access to more draw engines besides just relying on Hiram. And since Sapphire's always looking to put multiple cards in your inkwell per turn, you're most likely going to see value from this right away. Another 2 cost card coming with Shimmering Skies that I think is going to be really crucial in the metagame is going to be Tipo. He is a inkable 1/2 with the ability Measure Me Again. When you play this character, you can put a card from your hand into your inkwell face down and exerted. A very similar effect to cards like Mickey Mouse or One Jump Ahead, but instead of coming off the top, it's going to be actually from your hand, which is going to be a great way if we end up with some high cost uninkables in our hand early. We can get rid of them, put them in the inkwell, and if we also have a Chicha on the board, we'll be able to draw a card to replace it. Combo this with some of the bouncing abilities, being able to pick and choose, put extra cards into our inkwell from our hand, and then because we're doing that, also draw cards. I think is going to be a really strong combo, and I hope it turns out to be a lot of fun because I like the idea of just bouncing in the early game, getting up to our desired ink totals, and then using our late game cards just to roll over. All right, now moving on to our 3 cost. It's going to be another staple of purple decks, Madam Mim Fox. It is a 3 cost, inkable, 4 attack, 3 willpower. She does have Rush, and when you play her, you do have to replace something from your board, meaning that we can pick up our Tipo. This card is super strong for the bouncing characteristics alone. Because it has Rush, we're also able to send it into some of the bigger bodies on our opponent's side of the field or their locations. If you've played purple before, you're very familiar with this card, and it's glad to see it back for another set, and we're just glad to see it super useful again in another set. Following up on that, another 3 cost card that's been around for a while. It's going to be Merlin Crab, and we're including this in the deck for 2 reasons. We're running 4 copies of this because we are running the brand new legendary Merlin, so we want to have as many Merlins in our deck as possible, but the ability itself is really good. When you play him and when he leaves the play, you're going to be able to give one of your characters Challenger +3, meaning that we're going to be able to swing a lot higher into bigger characters, bigger locations, and win trades that we normally wouldn't be taking. Moving on, we do have another Madam Mim card coming with Shimmering Skies. This one's going to be the Elephant, and this one actually has 2 abilities, which for 1 extra cost is something nice to see. It has the standard Madam Mim ability of bouncing a card on the field back to your hand, but also with its tankier stat line of a 4/7, it's got the ability that at the start of your turn, you can move 2 damage from this character to an opposing character, meaning that if your opponents can't take this out in 1 turn, they're going to start feeling the effects of damage moving to characters of their own. So your opponent's going to need to make sure that they have something very strong with a lot of strength or instant removal on the board. It does have a little bit weaker of a strength, so things like Madame Medusa will take it out, but this is going to really start to mess with the math of your opponent, because if they can't do the 7 damage in 1 shot, you are going to start being able to move that to your opponent, and then this can survive even longer, taking out more cards with it. All right, next up, we've got another 4-cost character, classic to purple, 4 copies of Merlin Goat. When you play him and when you lose play, you're going to gain a lore. We're going to be using this not only to keep the bounces rolling, but also getting a Merlin on the field as a potential shift target to pull one of our real endgame characters is going to be key, which is why we're also running 4 copies of Merlin Rabbit, allowing us to draw a card every time that it enters play and when you lose play. And why not include another Merlin character? This one is new though. It's going to be Merlin Turtle. This card though is actually just an upgraded version of the Merlin Squirrel. Instead of just scrying 1 card, you're actually going to be able to scry 2. So whenever you play this character and when you lose play, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, place one on the top of your deck and another on the bottom. And with him being a little bit more expensive, he does quest for 2 as well. So this could be a early game character that we start to see being placed to really filter out your deck and get some early game questing pressure on the board. Because if our opponents leave this on the board, we always have the threat of shifting on our big Merlin and getting whatever card we need into our hand. Next up, another new card that's coming with Shimmering Skies. It's a 4-cost uninkable Belle card. This Belle has ward. She's 2/3, questing for 2, and when you play her, all your characters on your side of the field are also going to gain ward. This card is going to be big at protecting some of our late game threats so that they can't be targeted by single ability actions, increasing the likelihood that we're going to be able to use those threats in the way that we want to use them. If you've watched this channel, you know I'm a big fan of the Aurora that gives everybody ward. So having it on a card that when it enters play gives the same effect. I'm really excited to experiment with this card, see how it works, see how it plays, and if this thing's really easy to dance around, we might get rid of it. But I have a feeling with how much bounce we have in our deck, we'll be able to pick this up, replay it very often, meaning that our characters will have ward for most of the game if we can get our combos rolling. All right, and now probably what's going to be one of the most expensive cards in Shimmering Sky. It's going to be the legendary Merlin, Intellectual Visionary. He is a 6-cost uninkable, 3 strength, 7 willpower, questing for 2. He does have shift 5, and the main reason why this card is so good is when you play him with shift, you get to search your deck for any card in your deck, put it into your hand, and then reshuffle. And especially with how many Merlins that we're playing in this deck, we'll hopefully be able to do that as often as possible, meaning we'll have access to any tool in our toolbox whenever we need it. And with it going straight to your hand, that means we could even play it if we have enough ink. Since this card is so important to how the deck works, we'll run 4 copies of this as well. Hopefully the prices aren't astronomical, but taking a quick look at the pre-order prices, this one might be pretty insane. It is already similarly priced to how Diablo was, so I would expect this card to stay around the $30 to $40 range. Right now it is sitting at $50, but usually that drops on release day. If you're interested in playing something with this card, I would try and pick up copies as early as possible, and then if this is really a meta card, you won't have to pay that real meta tax to acquire it, hopefully. Another card that is brand new to Shimmering Skies that I want to try out with this deck is going to be Anna, Mystical Majesty, 7-cost uninkable. As I said, this is where we're getting into the more expensive part of the deck, which is a key reason why we're running blue with this deck. She is a shift 4, although we don't have any other Annas in this deck, but she has the ability, exceptional power. When you play this character, exert all opposing characters, meaning that we'll be able to attack anything on the board, because even things with ward are going to end up getting turned. Thematically, this is probably one of my favorite cards because it does a lot of things that Elsa does in Amethyst, but it's fun to get a Floodborn version of Anna that does the same stuff. I think we have to give this card a little bit of the advantage over Elsa though. Being able to affect everything on the board is something that's very strong, and we'll just have to see how this plays out once we get paper copies of it. And then our last character in the deck, throwing this in here, just because if you can get this card off, it is game over. It's going to be the 8-cost Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock. He quests for 4, he's a 4/9, and he has 2 abilities. The first one is, when you play this character, exert all cards in your inkwell, shuffle them up, and return 2 cards to your hand. And his second ability is, whenever you quest with this character, ready all cards in your inkwell, meaning you essentially get to take a second turn if you have cards in your hand and ink. I can only imagine what you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to play some goats, bounce them, quest with Mufasa, get 4 lore just from that, and then do another couple goat bounces, easily getting like 8 to 10 lore in a turn. And if we can give it ward with that bell from earlier, we could even protect it for a turn, meaning that unless there's a be prepared, he'll be able to do his combo and we could win the game. This is another one, probably going to be on the more expensive side for legendary cards, just because it has such a game altering ability. But this is going to be one of the hypest moments when you're able to pull this off. But It's super telegraphed, and you have to be in the right conditions to make it work. But if it does work, it's going to feel almost as satisfying as your big Tamatoa plays, being able to come back from out of nowhere and win the game. And then wrapping up, we have two other cards to talk about. The first one's going to be our only song inclusion in the deck list. It's going to be Friends on the Other Side. Just a classic card to play in any purple deck. Being able to draw cards for essentially free by singing this is super strong, allowing us to go deeper into our deck, ensuring that we always have a bounce card or an ink card, and because we play so much bounce, we can bounce the character that sings this, keep them safe. Just a very classic card to include in purple. And then another card that's seen a ton of play in purple, gonna be the Queen's Castle. 4 copies of it as well, just getting you the passive lore, and having the upside of extra card draw per character that you have here puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to deal with it right away, meaning that we now have more freedom to make the plays that we want to play, bounce the cards that we want to bounce, because they're going to be dealing with this, or we're going to be getting as many cards as we need when our turn starts. All right, that wraps it up for our first test of putting together a new Blurple deck. Obviously, this is not going to be the final version of the deck. We have to do a lot of iterating, we have to do a lot of testing in person, see how these colors feel now that we have some new additions and new ways to get ink, new ways to bounce. We're just 1 week away now from Shimmering Skies release at your local game stores. I am super excited to get out there, get my hands on some of these new cards, and just play a bunch more Lorcana. If you guys have been enjoying the videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We've got a bunch of content planned for the launch of Shimmering Skies, and you won't want to miss it. If you've made it here to the end, thank you so much again for watching. I will see you guys next time, and have fun out there.